My name is Rowan Elledge, and for most of my life, people only noticed me when something broke. While other kids drew flowers or built Lego castles, I was rewriting calculator code in 5th grade so it could predict test scores. My mother, Elaine, thought it was cute. My father, Grant, didn't look up from his phone. And my sister Celeste, 3 years younger, louder, always camera-ready, stood center stage at every birthday recital and family photo, whether she earned it or not. I didn't mind then. Quiet suited me. So did code. It was clean, honest. The more logic you gave it, the better it worked. Not like people. By the time I graduated MIT, my parents' boutique marketing firm in Portland was circling the drain. Elledge strategies had once been respected, but they'd clung too tightly to analog habits in a digital world. Campaigns fell flat. Clients vanished. Layoffs followed. I came back because I saw a fix. Not in their slogans or rebranding ideas, but in the software I'd started building as a student. A predictive analytics engine that could scan consumer behavior, anticipate trends, and adapt strategy in real time. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. I called it Thread. Quietly, I offered to integrate it into their firm's operations. My parents were skeptical. Celeste laughed. We need clients, not spreadsheets. But within a year, Thread had cut costs by 40% and brought in 3 Fortune 500 contracts. By year 2, we were fielding offers from national chains. The company roared back to life headlines, calling it a miracle turnaround. Celeste, who'd recently returned home from a failed PR startup in Austin, volunteered to handle the client demos. I can sell it better, she said. She could. She was good in a room, charming in meetings, photogenic for interviews. I stayed behind the screen, tweaking Thread, optimizing workflows, fixing bugs no one knew existed. When Elledge Strategies hit $150 million in valuation, I thought maybe this time they'd say my name. Maybe they'd finally see the girl who built their empire while they were busy polishing someone else's spotlight. Instead, the press clippings read, "The Elledge Sisters Visionary and Voice." Celeste smiled from the cover. My name didn't appear once. When I was 9, I won a state robotics competition. I built a sorting arm that used color sensors to organize marbles faster than any human hand. My dad nodded and asked if I remembered to clean my room. That same week, Celeste made a glitter poster for a school fundraiser, and my parents called every relative to brag. It was always like that. Celeste sparkled. She knew how to spin half-truths into charm and stumbles into style. I watched her fail upwards more times than I could count, each time caught by the safety net of our parents' belief that she was meant for bigger things. When her social media startup flopped, they blamed the algorithm. When her PR internship ended early, they blamed the company's toxic culture. But when I burned out in my 2nd year of grad school from taking on too many AI projects, they said I lacked balance. After MIT, I didn't come home with dreams of praise. I came back with a timeline and a plan. Elledge Strategies was bleeding offices, downsized staff, cut clients, dwindling by the month. I offered to help. Not because I missed them, but because I couldn't watch something die when I knew how to save it. I turned the guest bedroom into a lab. At night, I coded until my wrists ached. I didn't tell them everything. I registered my software Thread under a new entity, NovaLogic Systems. Quietly, legally, securely. The license to use it would run through Elledge Strategies, but the ownership was mine, just in case. Celeste waltzed in and out of the house like it was a stage. She'd ask what I was building, tilt her head, pretend to listen, then say, "Make it pretty for the presentation, okay," and leave. She had no idea what the software actually did. Neither did my parents, really. They just knew the phones were ringing again. Clients were returning. Numbers were up. They started calling it Celeste's relaunch. I let them. It was easier than fighting, easier than needing them to understand. I had Thread. I had NovaLogic. I had the truth stitched into every line of code I'd written alone. Thread didn't just work. It performed like nothing we'd seen. Within 6 months of deployment, campaign success rates jumped by 35%. Thread mapped consumer trends with eerie accuracy, adjusting ad spend in real time, identifying under-tapped markets, even recommending copy changes based on regional tone analysis. Clients noticed. So did our competitors. Elledge Strategies went from a relic to a rising star in Portland's tech marketing scene. Clients who hadn't answered our calls in years were suddenly scheduling meetings. Starbucks signed a regional campaign. Then REI. Then a chain of boutique hotels from California. Thread scaled effortlessly its predictions, refining with every new data point. My inbox flooded with API access requests. Our servers strained under demand. Celeste stepped in to represent the brand. That's how she put it. One day, she stood at my door holding a fresh blazer and said, "You don't want to do interviews, right?" I didn't answer. She took it as a yes. She had the voice for it. Warm, enthusiastic, just vague enough to sound insightful without saying anything concrete. She started giving presentations with my dashboards on display, my models behind the curtain. She practiced lines like our predictive algorithms, and we've built something intuitive. Clients ate it up. At first, I didn't care. The work was what mattered. Watching Thread evolve in real time was a kind of quiet miracle. But slowly, something shifted. Investors stopped asking technical questions. New clients asked for Celeste by name. One article in Portland Innovators Weekly ran a feature titled, "The Woman Reviving Family Business with Her Signature AI." Celeste's face covered the entire top half of the page. I skimmed it twice. My name wasn't mentioned. At the next team meeting, she handed out branded notebooks that read, "Vision, Voice, Victory." Alliteration was her thing. I watched the staff clap. Half of them didn't know the system's architecture was built in my bedroom. Dad framed the article and hung it in the lobby. I kept building. Thread was evolving, and I had plans for a major update, a reinforcement learning module that could reshape entire campaign strategies autonomously. But no one asked about that. They asked if Celeste was speaking at the next conference, if she'd share her creative process. It became clear. I wasn't just behind the scenes, I'd been erased from the story. And yet the platform kept growing. Every query, every client win, every line of praise misdirected to the wrong mouth only made me more certain of one thing. The launch party was held at a rooftop venue downtown, all glass railings and exposed beams. String lights flickered over white-clothed tables. I wore a navy jumpsuit, simple, neat, functional. Celeste shimmered in silver sequins, her hair curled in soft waves. I arrived early, checked the server logs from my phone in the corner, then folded quietly into the crowd. It was a celebration for Thread's official release as a standalone product, a move I had architected, optimized, and coded into reality. The firm was no longer just a marketing agency. It was a tech player now powered by the platform I'd built from scratch. As the sky darkened, laughter rose over jazz and champagne flutes. My mother worked the room with practiced charm. Grant hovered by the bar holding court with clients. Celeste flitted between conversations like a practiced campaigner. I stood near the projection screen watching Thread's dashboard cycle through live metrics, real-time wins, system performance, client sentiment scores. It was working. All of it. A few minutes before dessert, someone dimmed the lights. Grant stepped forward with a microphone, his whiskey glass raised. "Tonight's more than a celebration," he began, his voice warm and rehearsed. "It's a rebirth. We were on the brink, many of you know that. But something changed. Someone had vision, guts, style." He turned to Celeste, who froze mid-smile. "It gives me great pride to announce that the architect of our future, our new Chief Innovation Officer, is Celeste Elledge." The applause was thunderous. I didn't move. Celeste blinked, then stepped forward. She looked straight at me before turning back to the crowd. "Thank you," she said, voice slightly cracked but confident. "This is just the beginning." I stood perfectly still. My heart wasn't pounding. It was quiet, cold. The rest of the evening blurred. Guests came to congratulate her. Some shook my hand, too, mistaking me for a junior developer. I smiled and nodded. I even took photos. But the moment that burned came later when my parents found me at the bar. Grant handed me a gift bag, grinning. A little something for the woman behind the curtain. Inside was a ceramic mug that read, "Best Assistant." I nodded. "Thanks," I said, wrapping my fingers around the handle. I carried that mug back to my apartment, set it next to my monitor. And while the city slept off its champagne, I opened Novologic's admin dashboard and began to move every piece back under my own name. The house was silent when I returned. I slipped out of my heels, padded into my office, and powered on my workstation. The glow of the monitors felt steadier than anything else that day. Thread was still humming in the background, its logs clean uptime flawless. It didn't care who got credit. It just ran. I opened the Novologic console and authenticated with a biometric key, something I'd built in myself a quiet safeguard from years ago. One by one, I reviewed the permissions. Elledge Strategies had access through a renewable license agreement tied explicitly to my position as Director of Technical Operations. That clause had been buried in the legal packet I filed when I returned. Grant had signed it without looking. I initiated the process license termination pending leadership change. Access would remain live until 7 a.m. I didn't rush. I reviewed every contract, Starbucks, REI, 7 other major clients, each with a clause giving them the right to walk if I did. Each one automated to receive a termination notification the moment my role officially ended. I drafted the message carefully, not bitter, just facts. As of this evening, I am no longer affiliated with Elledge Strategies. Under the terms of our agreement, you are now free to renegotiate or terminate service with no penalty. Please find attached the legal references and relevant dates. I sent each one individually. No BCCs, no mass list. The air felt still as I watched the outbox clear. At 1:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Celeste, you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. She had no idea what she was asking, no idea what I'd done, no idea what was coming. I powered off my phone. Back on the screen, a new alert popped up Novologic's system confirming revocation of the firm's back-end privileges. Their dashboards would go dark by sunrise. I leaned back, fingers still tingling from the keystrokes. Not from nerves, from clarity. They'd built a stage with my work stood on it and called it their own. By morning, they'd be standing in the dark. By the time I walked into the office at 8:30 a.m., the damage had already begun to show. The front desk assistant was on the phone, voice-strained eyes flicking between screens. A junior developer was pacing by the elevator murmuring, "I can't access anything. Nothing's syncing." In the hallway, someone asked where the analytics dashboard had gone. No one had answers. I passed them all calm-collected, holding a folder under one arm and my resignation letter on a flash drive. My heels clicked steadily on the tile floor, cutting through the quiet panic. Grant and Celeste were already in the executive conference room. The door was open. Celeste stood beside the whiteboard, her phone in hand, eyes wide. Grant was at the head of the table, red-faced, flipping through papers like they might offer some logic to what was happening. When they saw me, Celeste's shoulders sagged with something between relief and dread. "Rowan, thank God. Something's wrong with Thread. It's not loading. Can you—" "I know," I said, placing the folder gently on the table. "It's intentional." Grant stood. "What are you talking about? I've terminated your license," I said evenly. "Thread is no longer authorized for Elledge Strategies." "You can't do that," he said, laughing in disbelief. "That's our software." I met his eyes. "No, it's not. Novologic Systems owns Thread. Always has. You signed a licensing agreement when I came back. You also signed a clause that tied that license to my leadership role." Celeste looked stunned. "You're leaving?" I nodded and slid the flash drive across the table. "Here's my formal resignation, effective immediately." "You don't have to do this," she said quickly, her voice almost pleading. "We can fix this." "Dad, he didn't mean I'm not here for apologies," I said. "I'm here to reclaim what I built." Grant's face twisted. "You blindsided us." "No," I said. "You just never bothered to look." I turned to leave. Behind me, chairs scraped back and papers fluttered. The walls that held our supposed legacy trembled with the weight of something real finally shifting. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored door. Not smug, not angry, just steady. I stepped out into the morning air, the sun rising over the skyline. By then, my inbox had already started to fill with client confirmations, terminations, transfers. The collapse had begun. The office in the Pioneer District smelled like fresh paint and opportunity. It wasn't much, just 3 rooms above a bookstore, but it was ours. The desks were mismatched, the Wi-Fi finicky, and the coffee machine made a wheezing sound before it worked. Still, when I opened my laptop and watched the NovaLogic servers stabilize under our domain, it felt more solid than anything I'd built before. 12 clients followed in the first 24 hours. Starbucks, REI, 2 mid-sized agencies from Austin and Chicago. They didn't ask questions. They knew where the innovation came from, and more importantly, who made it run. My team was small, just 5 of us. People who'd stayed up with me through long nights, debugging people who never minded that I didn't talk much in meetings, only that I delivered. No one asked who the face of the company was. They already knew. By noon, we'd sent out our first updated proposals. By 3, we had 2 signed contracts in hand. I watched the numbers roll in, not with adrenaline, but with clarity. This was mine. Not because I'd taken it, but because I'd earned every line of code, every client, every cautious yes. At 6:42 p.m., Celeste called. I let it ring. At 7:09, she texted, "Please talk to me." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, an email from Grant landed in my inbox. No subject line, just a sentence. "We can fix this." There was nothing left to fix. They'd broken something fragile when they mistook silence for absence. I hadn't walked away in anger. I'd walked away because I finally understood I didn't need to wait for them to see me. The launch metrics came through just before midnight. Thread, now under NovaLogic branding, had deployed with 0 downtime. Our new dashboard interface was already being praised by the clients who'd stuck with us. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and sat for a moment in the dark. No champagne. No applause, just the soft hum of machines doing exactly what they were built to do. And for the first time, that was enough. The message came a few days later. "Can we talk? Just once. Please." It was short, unpolished, unlike her. I agreed to meet at a cafe near the waterfront, the kind of place with cracked tile floors and chipped mugs far from the glossy spaces she usually floated through. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting by the window. No makeup, no polished hair, just a plain sweater and dark circles under her eyes. She stood when she saw me, but I didn't offer a hug. We sat. "I didn't know," she said quietly, fingers wrapped around her cup like it might anchor her. "I didn't realize what was happening with the contracts, the software, any of it." I stirred my tea and said nothing. "I thought you'd always be there," she added. "I thought—" "You didn't mind." I raised my eyes to hers. "When they handed you the title, when they said you built something you didn't understand, did you ever question it?" Her face crumpled. She looked down. "No. I didn't think. I just took it." "That's the difference between us," I said. "You never had to think about what you were given. I never stopped thinking about what could be taken." She reached across the table, but I didn't move. "Please, Rowan, we're falling apart. Dad's a mess. Investors are pulling out. We can't fix this without you." Her voice shook like it was the first time she'd said those words out loud. I stood slowly, tucking my chair back. "You wanted the title Celeste. Keep it. Figure out what it actually means." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't stay to watch them fall. Outside, the city buzzed with the quiet rhythm of late afternoon. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked toward the light rail without looking back. There was nothing left to prove. No speech to give, no crown to take. Just the sound of my own footsteps, steady and sure, moving forward. Within 3 weeks, Elledge Strategies unraveled. The firm issued a quiet statement about organizational restructuring, but the silence from its major clients said everything. Grant was removed by the board. Celeste resigned days later. The media tried to spin it, but the tech blogs gave it teeth. The AI coup, one headline read, "When the ghost in the machine had a name." I didn't comment. NovaLogic, meanwhile, signed 2 more contracts, one with a healthcare startup, the other with a sustainable retail brand looking to scale. The work was clean, collaborative, transparent. My team was growing not just in size, but in spirit. There was no drama, no spotlight chasing, only forward motion. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local university's tech ethics seminar. I almost declined, but something in me paused. Maybe it was time to say something not for attention, but for the next person sitting in silence. I didn't prepare a script. I brought the mug instead. Best Assistant, it said in glossy letters chipped at the rim. I set it on the podium and let it sit there through the whole talk. I spoke about innovation, ownership, what it means to build when no one's watching, and what it costs when someone else steps in at the end. The students listened closely. A few nodded. One in the back raised her phone to snap a photo of the mug. I didn't stop her. Afterward, I walked out with a quiet sense of weight having shifted. Not lifted exactly, just placed somewhere it belonged. The mug rode home in my bag beside a new proposal contract. Another door opening quietly exactly the way I liked it. The envelope arrived without a return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Slanted too tight, like he was always trying to fit too much into a single line. Grant never texted when he could lecture. Even his apologies came on paper. I held it for a moment, then slid it unopened into the back sleeve of my scrapbook. The page already held a photo of the Nova Logic team at our first product milestone, grinning in hoodies and wrinkled button-downs, half caffeinated but proud. Next to it, the signed contract that had taken our valuation past $600 million. And beside that, the mug. Best Assistant still chipped at the rim. I closed the book and set it on the shelf. Outside, the Portland skyline shimmered under low clouds. My new apartment overlooked the river, clean lines and quiet corners. No noise, no titles, no stage. I made a cup of coffee and carried it to the window. For years, I'd waited for someone to tell me I mattered, that I was more than the code, more than the silence. Now, no one needed to say it. I'd built something no one could take, not to prove them wrong, but to finally believe I was right.